Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Underdog podcast, and I'm your host, Gary London. Today's episode, we're going to get into something a little different. We're going to be talking a little bit about songwriting and what that's all about. Songwriting. This is a very different subject I'm getting into today. There's a lot of mystery, perhaps, about the whole idea of songwriting, and the way I got into songwriting is kind of interesting. There's probably no one way that people get into songwriting. I'm guessing that for a lot of you out there that write songs, maybe it came naturally for you, but for a lot of people, it's not something that's very natural. But in order for me to talk about songwriting, it's important for me to talk a little bit about my history and how I got into music a little bit, and how it came to be that this became such a huge part of my life. So, thinking back to when I was young, I wrote a few songs when I was. This is what my mom says, at least, that I wrote some lyrics when I was little. I did start playing guitar when I was very young. When I was probably 4 or 5, I would hear my mom playing acoustic guitar as I was going to sleep. She would sight read like Beethoven and Mozart. I'm not exactly even sure who the artists were, Bach or something. In any event, it encouraged me. I had this kind of sense of competition built into me, whereas I was like, I got to learn what my mom's doing. This is very cool. So very quickly, I learned to play the guitar. I learned to sight read music initially, and I learned all the songs. I had a Mel Bay songbook. I taught myself from the songbook, learned to read music, and then read a lot of music, and from there just kind of got better. So about age 10, moved from Cleveland to Ellicottville, New York, where a year later I met Chris and Steve, who played in my band. Rock On and Off and Vapor. I don't know if you saw other episodes of my other podcast, but talked a little bit about those guys. But there's these two guys, these twins that I met, Steve and Chris Ruskowski. Now, when I first met Steve and Chris, they were very, very green. Steve didn't play at all. Chris played a little bit of piano, but the chords that Chris knew on the piano were basically A minor, G, and F, and real simple chords, all white keys on the piano, and those were really the root of the chords that we used in the first songs that we wrote. Chris wrote. I remember it was. He actually used those 3 chords in a song, and it wasn't bad actually. For only 3 chords, kind of went like this. And so when Chris learned, or when Chris wrote his first few songs, of course, I sort of had this sense of competition in me, so I had to learn to write songs too, and I used the same 3 chords in the first on the first songs that I wrote as well. And I have to say that Chris's first songs were much better than what I wrote, and it was, if it wasn't for a sincere sense of competition, what I probably wouldn't have continued to try to develop myself as a songwriter, because judging, I think I'm a pretty good judge of music. Judging my own material off the bat, it was not good. So anyone, or a lot of people might say, I just maybe am not cut out for this, and maybe just shouldn't be a songwriter. And then we have my friend Chris, not dealing with Chris, but having a relationship with Chris. I'll show you. This is just, I've got a picture here of Mozart, and the reason I have young Mozart, a picture of him there, is just to kind of demonstrate that there's different kinds of songwriters out there. Most songwriters are like me in that we can generally come up with, we get flashes of inspiration, and then suddenly the flash will end, and we don't always see what a finished product might sound like. But not to say that we're not creative. I think most people are creative now. People like Mozart and people like Chris Ruskowski. Here's an older Mozart here, but here let's get Chris into the picture. This is a picture of Chris. Point the right direction. Here's a picture of Chris playing at our. This is the second year that our band was together. So I'm about 12 years old. So that put Chris at about 15 years old, and somewhere in there, I think we met probably when he was 13. I was probably 10 years old. Somewhere in there, he started to really write some quality songs, and I got to tell you, I don't really have any idea how somebody with so little experience can write such amazing music. There's something special about some people. Sometimes I wonder if maybe Chris, if Chris ever sees this, I hope he doesn't take offense to this, but maybe he's on the spectrum. He just had some really, really brilliant ideas. He seemingly had experience beyond his years and wrote some beautiful music. So we from the beginning of our band, we were writing songs, and so very quickly we decided to go to the studio and record them. So we decided to pack up our bags one time, and we headed to Cleveland, Ohio. Our drummer at the time, I'll get into the details of this stuff in future podcasts, but the gist of it is that our drummer quit, or maybe just wasn't good enough. I can't remember the case. If I think we just ended up without a drummer, and we had studio time booked in Cleveland, Ohio. So it was kind of a strange recording session. It was a 24-hour recording session. So we booked all of our studio time all at once, and that was kind of interesting. So we went there, and Chris had to program this drum machine. We decided that since we didn't have a drummer, that we were going to play with a Linn drum machine. And the amazing thing was that Chris programmed this drum machine, and he really had such a really good sense of what the finished product of these songs was going to be going into the studio. So Chris had a way of conceptualizing a song from beginning to end in his head. And that's really what I marvel at, people that can do that. The way I write songs is I write possibly like a part. I'll come up with one interesting part, and then sometimes I come up with two parts, or if I'm really creative, I'll maybe come up with a variation of that one part very, very quickly. But then I don't always see what the final product is going to be until I start laying tracks down, until I kind of work with it a little bit. So just keep in mind here, we're go now, jump back to 1986. Yeah, that sounds earlier, 1985, and we didn't have all that much experience. Another thing I want to say too about songwriting is that you're dealing with the subconscious brain, and the thing about the subconscious brain is that you really don't have a lot of control over it, and it's influenced by everything that you hear, and it's influenced by your dreams even. So in order to really get your subconscious brain working, generally, you need to fill your brain with a lot of as a songwriter, you fill your brain with cover music, with a lot of different styles of music, learning cover songs, learning other people's styles of writing. All that's very, very valuable as a songwriter, and so as you learn other song, learn, say, like Rick Springfield or Pink Floyd or a cover song, as you're learning the music, especially if you're learning it by ear, you're really getting to know what that songwriter was thinking or gearing towards in terms of chord structure, and then you start to see patterns in songs. You start seeing patterns in chords, and you start learning 1-4-5, which is a pattern of music that has to do with root, and then the fourth and the fifth, and it's a real technical thing. But my point is that we at such a young age, we hadn't learned songs yet. We hadn't covered that much music yet. But at the same time, Chris was writing just incredible music, brilliant stuff. And I harken back to Mozart, who was writing songs as a child, and was a savant, and seemingly knew more than he could possibly have learned at such a young age. And I saw the same thing in Chris. And let me give you an example. So we went to Cleveland, Ohio, and we had this wasn't our first recording session. This is a picture here of us in Cleveland recording. I would consider our first quality tape, CD, demo, that kind of thing, whatever you want to call it. But the brilliance of Chris's songwriting. So I want to play this for you. This is so we are, let's see, Steve and I had a debate about this. Chris, so I'm 13, and that would put Chris at 16. So, but he wrote this song when he was 14, 15 years old, and we had only started to cover music. This song is called Life's Unfair. And just listen to this song.
I can hear the voices calling, they echo everywhere. They try to tell us time can't change us. They say that life's unfair. And we tell them always that we don't care. We tell them always we don't care. We tell them always that we don't care.
It's some really good stuff. Now this is kind of a funny picture here. You kind of get the idea of what I'm talking about. This stuff was really, really good. This picture here, I'm speaking from experience here. I can't tell you what Chris's experience was being in the band and going through what we went through and his songwriting journey. But for me, I was the young one in the band, and you can see here the look on my face because I had a feeling of not wanting to be left out, and you get this look here. I don't look too happy, like Chris is taking over, and I don't like it. This is not. I don't look too happy there, but the sense of competition is what got me over the hump. So the first song I wrote wasn't good. The second song wasn't good. The third song wasn't bad, and the fourth and fifth and et cetera, et cetera. So the songs kept getting better. So my point really, I guess, is just that at first it's hard to see yourself. I was young, but the first thing you got to do if you're thinking about writing something, I guess that's really what the point of talking to anyone who's listening about songwriting is. I'm hoping that you're also a songwriter, and I'm hoping to encourage you to work on it more and to make it part of your life, like it's been such a large part of my life. So a lot of times I'm guessing that here, let's start from scratch here. Everybody has brilliant ideas, but like most of you, we forget our brilliant ideas. We'll have an idea for an amazing invention, or you'll get maybe you'll get part of a tune in your head and you'll be humming it, but mostly 99 times out of 100, your brilliant idea you'll forget your brilliant idea. So this is something that's really helped me along the way is your phone and or a recording device. So what I do always is whenever I come up with an idea, brilliant, hopefully brilliant. Whenever I come up with a brilliant idea, I tape it, and that way it helps you to remember it later. It's sort of like studying for a test. It's a way to, and it's also something that you can go back to and reference later. It's something you can work off of. So I thought with that in mind, I just 3 nights ago, I'm sorry that I feel like I'm stuttering and stumbling over my words. I spent a lot of time trying to get the pre-production ready for this show because I wanted to share so much with you. And so it's really late now, and I might even retape this tomorrow, but it's going okay so far. So hang in there with me. The important thing is the content, I guess. So the other night, I wanted to practice guitar. Generally, I practice guitar every day, and it was very late. I hadn't practiced all day, so I was about to go to bed, like tonight. And so I was talking about patterns. Music is a lot of patterns. So I've got some scales that I play. It's just like the major scale. Okay, so after years of practicing scales, I got sort of tired of that. So I come up with some different patterns to play with the scales. A couple of nights ago, I'm about to go to sleep. I decided to take one of these patterns and apply it to a different key or some different notes. Just take this pattern and let's try it in an utterly different position. So I did that, and I came up with a new idea. So it was the beginning of a new song. So the moment I wrote it, I was afraid I was going to forget it. So I grabbed my phone and I captured it onto my phone so I wouldn't forget it. And I just thought I would share that with you right now. Hopefully the technology works here for me. Okay, you can hear it pretty well. It's not framed. Whoa! Oh, there we go. I'm fixing it. That's better. So when I'm writing a song, I do something that's sort of like, what would you call it when you just write and write and write and write? I freeform. I improvise as long as I feel like I've expended my creative idea, and I try to play every variation. Brainstorm. Thank you. Sort of like a form of brainstorming. So I just try to push it all as far as I can, and I tape it all. So this is one way that I write a song. I'll come up with an instrumental part, and then I'll try to fit some words in there. Hopefully after I have the main idea of the song developed or figured out. That's the easiest way to write lyrics, is to have something to write about specifically. So it's not perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it was enough. It was enough to get the idea out there. So as I'm recording this, and I'm putting down onto my phone, I came up with some other ideas, and so. Imagining. So now that I hear that, I'm imagining now what the other instruments might be doing behind that. I can't. I'm not like Chris that can imagine what a final product is going to sound like before I actually hear it. My brain doesn't work that way. So here's the other idea that I came up with just right after it. And so songs generally have like a main part and then another part. So for me to have captured two totally different parts, it's sort of, I feel like I have enough there to write a whole song. This sounds like a bridge or a verse. The first part, there's some chorus, maybe a chorus part in there. There's a little Pink Floyd, Welcome to the Machine kind of change I thought of. So now I'm thinking of like every variation of the same pattern that I'm feeling creative about, and all within, you know, the chords that I've worked with in the past, and all trying to be sort of melodic. I try to work my way up and down melodically when I can. It's sort of obvious. If you're not sure what note to go to next, why don't you just go up and down the scale and see what happens? So hopefully that kind of gave you an idea. Now, what's kind of interesting is that the very next morning, so I captured that on tape on my phone, and I completely forgot. I went to bed and I completely forgot everything that I did. So the very next day, I had something to kind of get excited about. I was listening back on my phone to what I had done. And the very next day, I put my phone down, and then I was listening, and I thought that I played something different than what I actually had played, but what I thought it was actually cooler, and I thought of a new part the next day. So that's an interesting thing, is that when you tape things, something you start thinking of other ideas, and but I guess as a songwriter, it wasn't always so natural to always be working on the stuff, and that sort of happened over time for me. It became, my band was together for 16, 17 years. Long story short, I had written songs with Chris. The whole time we shared songwriting. He's a savant, right? Like he gets things finished. This is a good picture of Chris here. This is him really rocking later down the road. But for Chris, he would finish stuff so easily. Oh, I don't want to hear that again. Oh no! Oh, the technology's falling apart. Stop. All right. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right. This is what you get for trying to do too much at once. Okay. Now, how do I get that back up there? Nope, not that one. It's a display capture. There we go. Okay. Thank you. All right. There's a glitch in the matrix there. So here, let's try to do that smoothly here. So Chris, it's a good picture of Chris. So I didn't have the ability to finish songs. So what I would do is every time I would come up with an idea. I was good at writing like a guitar part or a little. I was inspired in little bunches, and I would hit the limit of my capacity to be creative, and I would think to myself, I can't finish songs. Maybe that's happened to you. But really, it was just the end of the creative flow. And so in the past, what I would do is when I hit that wall, I would go to Chris and I would say, hey, Chris, let me show you what I did. And then Chris would take that, and his genius brain would work, and he would finish the song. And we wrote a lot of songs like that, and most of them are really good. But occasionally, he would take a song in a direction that maybe I didn't like, or maybe I didn't like. So at that point, you can. It's hard to think of something new or something else once you lock into like a song is going in this direction, or then it's really, really difficult to think in any other way about that part and think of something better or something creative. So the point of saying that is that now when I hit that roadblock, I just hold that thought, and sometimes, most times, I'll come up with more of the song later in time. Happens all the time. So because of that, consequently, I've got a lot of songs that are sort of like mulling around in my head. So I write maybe, it seems like 4 or 5 songs a year. I don't write a lot of songs, and mostly I try to take my time. That creative flow ends, and rather than say to myself, I can't finish songs, the truth of the matter is that I've finished a lot of songs. Sometimes songs take a long time, especially if you want them to be good. If you want to hear crap that's like on the radio, then maybe you can just force yourself to finish a song that doesn't, but to me, ideas are special, and a song deserves it as much effort that can be put into it as humanly can be possible. If you care about the music, if you care about the lyrics. I remember hearing from I would call him a mentor. His name is Lauren Turner. He taught audio recording to Steve, Chris, and I at Jamestown Community College. He also taught Dan Beckley, who went on to take over Unistage in Buffalo. So I think maybe we know a little bit about sound, and he was once saying that he was talking about song lyrics, and he said something like, "Oh yeah, I know how you songwriters labor over those lyrics, and you edit them and you get them, you got to make sure that they're just right." And at the time, I actually just didn't give a shit that much about song lyrics, and would just rush through them. And then after his comment, I listened to my songs, and I thought, these songs needed more work. These songs the chords deserved more time, more thought needed to be put into them. So that's just it. You can do it. You can be a songwriter. All of us have natural talent. And actually, if you're an inventor, it's the same kind of thing. Or if you have a good idea, your ideas are valuable, and they deserve your full effort. And you need to tape, like I do, and progress your ideas, and don't let them go, and don't forget them. And that'll pretty much wrap it up for today's episode. I hope it was entertaining for you. And I will talk more about songwriting and get more deeply into the history of Rachmaninoff and Vapor. That's sort of the whole idea of this Underdog podcast, is to sort of give you some insight to the music business and my history, and hopefully it's entertaining for you. So don't forget to like this video and to subscribe. It's very late, and we just knocked it out of the park, didn't we? I don't know. It was glitchy, and I'm really thirsty, so now I'm like a mumbling fool. Thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing to my channel. I appreciate it. This it doesn't have anything to do with just having fun, and hopefully I'm getting better at this. That's my main motive, and the technology, I think, has got the better of me in this episode. Thanks for watching. The Underdog Radio Video